There is a drink that has kept people alive in some of the hottest, driest, most spectacularly unforgiving corners of the earth for thousands of years. It isn't Coca-Cola, it isn't Gatorade, and it certainly isn't kombucha. It's something far stranger. Milk from camels. Yes, camels. The very creatures you mostly associate with swaying caravans across dunes or groaning irritably at tourists in Morocco also happen to be four-legged dairies on stilts. Camel milk isn't just some quaint desert refreshment, it's a billion-dollar industry, a nutritional marvel, and in one rather extraordinary case, the basis for one of the rarest cheeses in the world, made only in Mauritania and known as Caravane. So how do you farm milk from an animal that can go a week without water and regards most humans with a look of mild contempt? And how on earth do you turn that stubborn, chemically uncooperative milk prone to doing everything but curdling into something as delicate and European-sounding as cheese? Well, that's the journey we're going on. Welcome, cheese and dairy enthusiasts. Whether you're all about Gouda, goat cheese, or a classic cheddar, we're here to share the love of all things dairy with you. So, sit back, relax, and get ready for a fun, cheesy experience. First, let's talk about camels themselves. There are two main kinds: the dromedary with one hump, which looks like it's always lost half its luggage, and the Bactrian with two humps, which resembles an animal that's eaten too many croissants. Over 90% of the world's camels are dromedaries, ranging across Africa and the Middle East, and these are the true milk machines. They can produce up to 10 litres a day under good conditions, more if you feed them well and sing sweet songs to them, which nomads often do, although the evidence on whether singing helps production is still unverified. In fact, camels are astonishingly generous. Their milk not only flows in environments where cows would keel over in despair, but it continues for well over a year after calving. A lactation can last 16 or even 18 months, producing thousands of litres in total. If you are a family in Somalia or northern Kenya, that's not just milk, that's life. Here's a thing you may not know. Camel milk has almost 10 times as much vitamin C as cow's milk. 10 times! It's lower in fat and lactose, and it's packed with proteins like lactoferrin that fight bacteria. In short, it is medicine in a jug. For nomads, it has long been food, drink, and pharmacy rolled into one. And modern science is now catching up, investigating its potential for diabetes management, immunity, and even autism research. But because there is always a but, camel milk has a quirk. It refuses to behave like cow's milk when you try to make cheese out of it. Drop ordinary rennet into cow's milk, and within minutes it obligingly clots into curds. Try the same with camel milk, and you get milk. Slightly offended milk, perhaps, but still milk. So how did a small dairy in Mauritania persuade it to become cheese? Mauritania. If you're like most people, you might struggle to locate it on a map. It sits in northwest Africa, mostly Sahara, mostly sand, and astonishingly hot for most of the year. You'd think this would be the last place anyone would want to set up a dairy. But then again, Mauritania is home to more camels than you can shake a stick at. And if you've got camels, you've got milk. Nancy Abderrahmane, a remarkable woman who in 1989 decided to start Tfiski, the first modern dairy in Mauritania. She looked around at all those nomads leading their camels across the desert and thought, there's a business here. If we can just collect the milk and treat it properly, we can support herders, feed cities, and maybe even create new products. And so began a logistical dance that only someone with either extraordinary vision or a complete disregard for sanity would attempt. Tfiski set up collection centers at points within 90 kilometers of the capital, Nouakchott. Nomadic herders bring their camels in, milk them by hand, no fancy machines, just hands, buckets, and the occasional stubborn calf that must be persuaded to share, and deliver the milk to chilling tanks. From there, it's trucked to the dairy, pasteurized, and bottled. Imagine trying to manage this across desert tracks with no refrigeration in 45-degree heat. It's a daily miracle that the milk makes it to the factory at all. Now, Nancy wasn't content with just selling bottled camel milk. She wanted to prove it could be transformed into something gourmet, something that would surprise the world. Cheese. Specifically, a camembert-style cheese made entirely from camel milk. And this is where the story gets deliciously odd. As we've already mentioned, camel milk simply does not like turning into cheese. Its proteins are slippery, its casein micelles are weirdly structured, and it resists coagulation like a stubborn teenager resists cleaning their room. But Tversky's team, after much experimentation, discovered a secret weapon: a special vegetable rennet combined with calcium phosphate and a microbial enzyme. Add these to camel milk, treat it very, very gently, and lo and behold, the milk finally gives in, forming curds that can be drained, molded, and ripened. The result? A soft, bloomy rind cheese with a white crust and creamy interior. They named it Caravane, though locals quickly dubbed it Camembert because of its resemblance to the famous French cheese. But here's the thing, Mauritanians themselves don't traditionally eat cheese. In fact, when Tversky first launched Caravane, most locals regarded it with suspicion. Cheese, after all, was something Europeans ate. So, who was going to buy it? Well, that's where Tversky faced its next challenge, marketing one of the rarest cheeses in the world in a country that didn't really want it. Now, here's where the plot thickens, or rather curdles, though very slowly, as camel milk tends to do. Tversky had cracked the scientific code to making cheese, but now came the economic code. How do you sell a delicacy that no one locally considers food? Imagine opening a sushi bar in the middle of 19th century Kansas. You'd have the same problem. People would eye it warily, poke it with suspicion, and probably prefer to stick with something familiar, like millet or rice. So, Tversky turned outward. Europe, they thought, would surely go mad for this exotic new camembert. And indeed, a few cheese lovers did. But then they hit the wall of bureaucracy. The European Union, that great fortress of regulations, had no category for camel milk products. You could import cow's cheese, goat's cheese, sheep's cheese, probably yak's cheese if you asked nicely. But camel, not a chance. Without a rule for it, there was no way to get it into European markets. Still, some small quantities of Caravane made their way abroad, sneaking into gourmet shops in New York or finding a niche audience of adventurous eaters. Those who tried it were surprised. The flavor was light, tangy, slightly salty but not overpowering, more delicate than goat's cheese, less fatty than cow's, and with an aftertaste that hinted at the dessert itself. Critics called it refreshing. One described it as a cheese that seems to breathe the air of sand dunes. Not bad for something made in a place where, frankly, most food traditions revolve around couscous and tea. But while Tversky wrestled with export laws, the rest of the camel milk world was undergoing its own quiet revolution. In Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia, camel milk was moving from nomadic use into small dairies that supplied urban markets. In Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, vast industrial camel farms were being built, with thousands of camels lined up in milking parlors like oversized grumpy cows. A single farm in Dubai now milks over 6,000 camels. Well, that's a lot of humps to keep track of. Camel milk is no longer just a survival food of nomads, it's a global commodity. The market today is worth billions, and it's growing. Powdered camel milk is exported to China. Pasteurized camel milk is sold in European supermarkets. You can even buy camel milk ice cream in specialty shops in Paris or Melbourne. And the reason is simple. Camels thrive where cows don't. As climate change bites harder into dry regions, camels are looking less like quaint relics of desert caravans and more like the future of sustainable dairying. But, and this is worth savouring, Mauritania remains unique. Only there, in one small dairy factory on the edge of the Sahara, does camel milk undergo its strangest transformation. From desert survival drink into an elegant, white-rinded wheel of cheese. Let's step back for a moment. What do we really have here? Well, on the one hand, an animal that looks like it was designed by a committee of drunk architects. Knobbly knees, rubbery lips, an ungainly gait, and a tendency to spit when annoyed. On the other hand, milk that has kept entire civilizations alive. A substance so oddly rich in vitamins and immune-boosting proteins that it has become both a health fad and a lifeline. And then, improbably, cheese. Delicate, creamy, European-style cheese crafted not in Normandy or Lombardy, but in Nouakchott, Mauritania, a city perched on the edge of the Sahara, where dunes creep into the streets. It's almost poetic. Camels, The ultimate desert survivors produce a food that defies the desert. Tavissky's Caravane cheese may be a niche product, but it embodies something larger: the capacity of people to innovate in the most unlikely of places. Consider the obstacles: milk that won't clot, customers who don't like cheese, and a regulatory system that doesn't even recognize your product. Most would have given up, but instead, Tavissky found a way, and in doing so, created not just a food, but a symbol. One that says even the harshest environments can give rise to surprising delights. And that is the beauty of the story. Camel milk isn't just about nutrition or novelty or billion-dollar markets. It's about resilience. It's about cultures that adapted to arid landscapes long before the phrase climate change ever existed. It's about science and tradition meeting in a factory in Mauritania to coax something elegant out of something stubborn. Camel milk is nutritionally extraordinary. With ingenuity, it can be transformed into cheese. Far from being a relic of nomadic life, it may be part of the answer to feeding the future. Put them all together, and you realize that the humble camel, grumpy, lopsided, oddly charming, is carrying more than just riders across the desert. It may be carrying us toward a more sustainable way of living. If camel milk can surprise us this much, what other foods are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone stubborn and curious enough to give them a chance? Maybe it's time we looked beyond the familiar cows and chickens and started paying attention to the foods that thrive in places most of us would never dream of farming. If you're enjoying this creamy content, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, 99% of our viewers haven't hit that subscribe button yet. It's totally free and just takes a second. We've got tons of cool stuff coming your way, and in the meantime, leave a comment down below. Share your thoughts with us. Your support helps us to keep exploring and uncovering the hidden side of what we eat. So don't be shy. Hit that subscribe button and age like fine cheese.